everyone, my name is Daphne St. Clair Ferguson, and I'm with some very important people from above the hospital. Now, if you could you introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about your role on this production?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Ritisha, and I'm playing Mikey, which is kind of like the incel, non-binary, really socially awkward puppy dog-esque character of the show. And I'm also involved in the film version of this production as a producer.
And hi, my name is Beau, and I'm the director and playwright of this production about the hospital. And been with this for several years, and going to be with it after this with the film as well. So very excited. Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, talk to me a little bit about this show. What is it about? And I'd love to hear about the journey of this show as well. I saw it was produced at the Revolver Festival. I saw some reviews from 2018. And now you're saying there's a filmed version. I'd love to hear about what this is about and the journey of the show.
Yeah, so it's been a crazy journey so far, and apologize for my Natasha Lyonne sounding voice. That's me today. So originally I wrote this play back in 2017, and then that's when I started getting into theater with Mid-20s Theater, and it was sort of our first original production that I did with some friends in Vancouver, because we're both from Vancouver actually, which is crazy. So we did that first production, and it was very cool, and it was mainly a response to essentially the economic housing crisis that happened before COVID with young people, because rent was so high, and in regards to being young, you weren't able to move downtown without essentially sacrificing it's a part of you, dreams, ambitions, and even just yourselves. So this play kind of came about indirectly with me and a couple of friends who found ourselves in this situation where we were in downtown, but we were sort of struggling with trying to build our dreams, but also facing the economic hardships of the times at the time. But anyway, so we did the show. It was quite great, and then we started doing other stuff in theater, and then COVID happened, and then that's where I essentially came to Toronto for a master's program. It was a pivot, a life pivot, and got more into film, and then started establishing a life in Toronto. And then as time came about, reasons brought me back to Vancouver, and I met Tish indirectly just through the film community there. And and then it was one of those things where it was sort of Above the Hospital feels sort of prominent now, and it was resonating with my friends at the time when I was reading it, and they're oh, remember that play? And then I started submitting it as part of development work just to sort of re-explore it, and then Revolver accepted it, and then that was when things started to happen, and then Toronto Fringe accepted it after we got off the wait list for that again. Because every year a lot of artists submit to the Fringe Festival like we do, and and we were we got to just do it. This has got to be a chance to bring it to Toronto, have a new audience, develop it further, and and now we're here, and Tish is here.
And we're turning it into a movie.
Yes, and then we're inevitably going to turn it into a movie, essentially because, it in a way is very cinematic and is about these real characters and real people, and we feel in regards to the democratic aspect of filmmaking is it is a nice way to really showcase a mirror for young people, and also for people and millennials who are going through a life pivot. We haven't really summarized what the show's actually about though.
I feel we're hitting a lot of the big numbers, the big topics.
The story, the big topics, the development story, I guess the lore in a way, how it came to be, but essentially the plot of the story is it essentially all takes place in one night. It's kind of this classical story of this group of friends who decide they want to host a pregame before a Death Cab for Cutie concert, but essentially what happens is a secret is revealed where one of the characters is essentially choosing to give up art to pivot into a more practical job. In this case it's nursing, but also in relation it's ironically this other character is wanting to quit their job so they can pursue music full time, and then that just sort of opens up a can of worms, and the whole pregame kind of explodes into this bigger thing and bottlenecks into something crazy and deep. So will they get to Death Cab? I don't know. You'll have to see the show.
Perfect. And I'd love to hear a bit about. So obviously, it started at the Vancouver in Vancouver as a housing crisis. How does this relate? Obviously, we have similar issues in Toronto, but what are some of those major differences that you see within producing this in Vancouver versus Toronto?
Do you want to take it?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I can't say much about Toronto, but I know with Vancouver, it's it's not just housing crisis, it's also the community around you, and how like with this Death Cab concert that happens at the play, it's like one thing we have going on is that like not all the characters even know what Death Cab even is, and that kind of speaks to the friendships that you kind of develop in Vancouver. Like Vancouver has a bad reputation for being a little flaky, but at the same time it's like artists try to show up for each other, you know, finding something that connects them at least and trying to grasp onto the community that you have.
Yeah, 100%. Like, and even with regards to like in Toronto, because I've been in Toronto for about 3 to 4 years now, because I did a whole master's here at York University, and then I lived here for a year afterwards, and now I'm like in between. I think with Toronto, it sort of just reflects kind of this whole aspect of this friendship in the art scenes, where it's a lot more scattered, and you sort of develop these like really quick kind of friendships in the moment, but then like you have a sense of like this could be the last time you'll see someone, because Toronto's sort of like a melting pot of Canada, where it's so multicultural and diverse, and like there's people that come just for like a master's program, and then they suddenly have to leave because they can't find a job, or just like they go through a life pivot, and then it's like, you know, you maybe never see them again. So Above the Hospital sort of reflects that within this one specific domestic space of an apartment, and then also like some people also resonate with this aspect of Toronto and like financial precarity and the crowded loneliness of our modern era, and with regards to like the quiet struggle in Gen Z, like, and I guess, yeah, Canada, there's this aspect of like we don't want to reveal like deeply how we're feeling or if we're struggling with stuff in our process as artists, but also as ourselves, and I feel like that's a very Toronto thing. Yeah, because you got to like keep a face, you know, it's a very brutal, kind of strong, rigid. I don't know how else to explain Toronto without risking controversy, but well, yeah, you know.
I feel like to contrast that a little bit, Vancouver also has that aspect of like feeling stuck where you are, you know, especially as artists and like with the people that you're around, and wanting to move up, but not exactly knowing how to do that. Right. Because it's not as much of a big city. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Love it. And I think we touched on quite a few of these topics, but I always ask everyone every year, like, what is Canadian theatre to you? And how are these maybe themes that you just spoke about reflected within the art scene? Or maybe it's what's Canadian film to you, since we're developing this into a film as well.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first, yeah.
Okay.
I'll be quick. I think like that's honestly such a great question, because even with Canadian theatre, I feel like for me now with doing Above the Hospital, it is very hyper localized this time in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood community where I was residing when I first wrote this play. So that is kept forth, and like there's a lot of really specific references to like where these characters go for food, for fun, and like where they're going. So I think for Canadian theatre, I don't know about the national identity. That's kind of actually what Above Hospital is about, is like these characters come together and they actually question like what is this aspect of the Canadian identity in arts, and like specifically like there's aspects of the Canadian dream. Like Kenneth, who's another actor in this and producer, and Ritisha, we had these great talks about like, you know, like America has this American dream, and it's all defined through their struggles like nationally and internally, but also like Canadian, what is the Canadian dream? Literally, you know, and yeah, and so I think, and then also there's a lot of historical specificity with like, you know, Indigenous relations in Canada and stuff, but I feel like Canadian theatre when it's defined by its like hyper locality of a community and neighborhood. So, and I think that's going to be coming through film as well. Yeah.
I also feel like Canadian theatre and Canadian film, they're kind of undefinable in a way, because we're always showing stories that are very personal, and that's what I feel like when I see these stories. Like I'll be watching something and I'll start crying, you know. It's so specific to like the local part of it, where people are coming from and that community. Like if it's a film that's, for example, an immigrant story, we see a lot of those, I feel like, and they're always very like specific and very personal. So yeah.
So talk to me a bit about if we do decide to do a film. So obviously this is set in Vancouver and we're doing it in Toronto. Are we shooting this in Vancouver or are we shooting this in Toronto? Do we know yet?
I think we're looking to shoot this in Vancouver just to keep the hyper specificity in the locality. But by being in Toronto, it's interesting because it provides us a development process where we can sort of see how this resonates beyond Vancouver in a way. And then also it gives a sense of like that sort of, I don't want to say spiritual homelessness, of which is the deep heart of what this play and the film is going to be about with these characters. And I think about Canadian theatre, it's like, again, it's undefinable. So it's like by bringing the show like into a different space and seeing what resonates deep down, but also what's separate, will bring us together and sort of, but also pull us apart in that in-betweenness. That's what I feel.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Perfect. And this is my other major question this year that I'm asking, and I think it's important to talk about as we're talking about financial crises and all this. Where's your money going? How are you spending your money? How are you producing work in Canada? How does that work for you folks?
Grants,
Yeah.
if we can get them. And we are.
Yeah, grants, and then obviously like for stuff like this, like a lot of self-funding. Actually, for me personally, like just like my like one of those things is like with Canada Council, like we and Telephone Talent to Watch, like we're applying to all these things every year. But with the wait periods and things like Toronto Fringe, if they come up, like it's really up to like the producer, and which is like me in this case for the show to sort of like figure out like, oh, like, you know, it'd be a lot more feasible and easier if I just like self-produced it, and then so that's kind of what I've been doing for this play. And then there's a lot of also external support with like Revolver and stuff, but yeah, and just taking a chance on your own art. Yeah.
It's interesting because I feel like we shouldn't let the fact that like, oh, if you don't have any money, like stop you, because I feel like that's always like, even with the wait times, that's always a great opportunity to like keep making it better, keep making the story better, keep finding connections in the meantime while you're waiting for some money to come through.
Yeah.
And at least finding people who have resources and gear and great actors to help and work on it.
Wonderful. And speaking of acting, so you're acting in this show. Talk to me a little bit about how you're balancing producing and performing at the same time. What's that balance like for you?
So I'm kind of a psycho, and I love using like both sides of my brain, like the logistical parts and like the artsy parts. I feel like everyone like always questions me about this, and I'm like, I feel like if I do both, I am more involved in the show, which keeps me like more invested in it overall anyways, because it's like I'm literally putting my whole soul into this, and now it's like my baby too. So it's been great. It's always chaotic, but it, like with producing, it's such an adrenaline rush, you know? Like when you get it done, it's like, oh yes, and then exactly, and then like when I want to shut it off, it's like, oh, now it's the creative side and it's the acting side. But yeah.
I think this is a great segue into one of my questions. So in a 2018 review, Colin Thomas asked the question, why have we presented rationality and artistry as being in opposition to one another? So we're talking about, you've got your creative brain and the logical brain. Why are they presented in opposition? And also, I mean, how do reviews affect like how you see your own work? Is this something that you even acknowledge as a part of the piece? You know what I mean? How does that present itself?
That is an excellent question. Thank you so much for bringing that up with Colin Thomas, because we love him so much. Yeah, like I think back then, when I first premiered the play, I was like a little bit like obviously younger and stuff. So it's just like reviews really heavily affected me. Like I would read them all, and obviously we had a publicist too. So it's like they would send like for record keeping and just like let us know how the dialogue is. And so if there was something that was kind of like off, I'd be like, oh no, it's okay. But then it's like now I look at it, I feel like reviews are actually very essential and necessary and actually awesome, especially a bad review too, because like a bad review kind of really shows another side that maybe you would never even see. Or it's just like, again, it's really all about creating a dialogue and bringing forth every single voice that can come out. And we do need reviewers and like critics to actually, because like those people are specifically trained to actually put into words what otherwise you might be trying to put into words through your art. Because art, and then back to the whole between of rationality and artistry, like I think it kind of has to come together in a way, like with regards to logistics, but I think deep down what this place kind of addresses is actually the actual capitalistic aspect of art making, which I think is kind of like I have issues with, because like as you're making art in this world, you want to just make art that's just like in your backyard for no money. But then like even when it comes to like the expectations of art for presenting it to audiences, like there's a standard now that is very based on a capitalist mentality, and is really like, oh, like is this like even in film, it's like is this clear? Is this shot like, can I see what's happening? Is this like on the nose? Is this not on the nose enough? And I think that's where I'm like the rational aspect of creating art kind of seeps into play of like, oh, will this sell? Will this sell? Will people come see it? Will they buy tickets? And I understand that's a part of art making, and we have to embrace that, but I also want to be transparent and like, you know, like art should really be beyond that. It should be about bringing this irrationality of life, of art, of meaning, and people, because words are limiting and they can't really define, you know, what you're trying to say. And that's why we have art and why we create it, you know. So that's how I feel about that. So, yeah.
I also feel like it can be integrated. Like, it doesn't have to always be opposing one another. Like, I agree with what you said there. And I feel like with rationality, that I think comes into like having that like business-ish logistical mindset when you're making that art too. Like, you have to be realistic about the resources you have, for example, and this is where my producer mind is kicking in now. But like, that's, I mean, there's that saying too, right? Like, limitation breeds creativity. And if it's like, you can be creative and rational at the same time because you're thinking about what you have and then you're using what you have at the same time. And then with reviews, I think there was that term you said, excuse my language, but like, if a show is like fuckable or something, you know?
There's this new thing. I forgot where we got it, but it's like, I think it was a friend of mine who was talking about like the show and like the development is like, as part in our word, the idea of unfuckable is like, we sometimes nowadays we like as a group will question like, oh, is this art fuckable in a way where it's open to, it'll subject itself to criticism, you know, like and that's sort of like the artistic choice of like, oh, choosing to leave something open-ended or leave a loophole or wormhole in there, and then or like leave something that could be potentially controversial or unhinged, and it's sort of like, oh, this could probably cause like a dialogue, but you know, that's what we want, that's the reaction we want, and we want to see what happens. So yeah, like we bring that, we kind of use the word, it's like, oh, how does this, by bringing this in, does this make the show more fuckable to criticism, you know? And if so, like, is it worth it? What are we trying to prove beyond that? Should we do that? That's kind of how we're,
the more controversial, the better.
Yeah.
I hope.
Sorry for swearing. Yeah.
You can beep that out.
Yeah, you can bleep that out.
We won't bleep it out. We're all adults here. We're good. Okay. So we think Above the Hospital is a fuckable show.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hands down. This is a fuckable show, everyone, okay? Come on, come see it.
I would fuck the shit out of this show.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Oh my God.
Sweet. I love it. Now, speaking of fuckable, in the casting call, we have that I think 3 characters must be okay with kissing. I'm wondering, how do we direct that kind of intimacy? Do we have an intimacy coordinator? What's that like? Obviously, I don't know the context of what's going on, but I'm just curious what that's like.
We do have an intimacy coordinator.
We do. Yeah, so we in this play, not spoilers, but there's going to be some kissing involved, and there's also hugging, so like scenes of intimacy. We have an intimacy director who's coming in for rehearsal, and should I name drop them? I guess I can.
It's your call.
Yeah, Kristen Potter, she's amazing, and we actually have a rehearsal tomorrow, and she's coming in tomorrow, and we're gonna, like, she has a whole process where she's gonna workshop like those scenes specifically throughout the whole play, and before that we have this dialogue where I email the whole play and those scenes, and then she comes back and asks me questions like, oh, like, there's also this aspect of hugging, do you want to explore that? And then it's funny enough because like we started this rehearsal process I think just 2 weeks ago. It's very quick. It's gonna be a very contained show and quick, but like there was things or moments where when it came to hugging in the scene and rehearsals, I'd ask like, oh, like Tish and like with Sid and Hassan, are you comfortable doing that? If not, it's okay, and they'll just be like, oh, we're okay, and then we just check in again. But with the kissing stuff, the actual stuff, we're waiting till Kristen comes in tomorrow.
Yeah.
Literally.
And I think so far, like, Beau has done such a great job of, like, creating that safe space. And we, as a cast, I feel like we're all truly bonding and getting comfortable with one another. Even though we haven't been rehearsing for, like, a super, super long time, I feel like the vibes are already amazing. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, once you create that safe space, you're able to let work fly, and I mean, at the end of the day, it is work, so I appreciate that. Thanks for sharing all of that. Now, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our little audience here about the show, about this process, what's next for you folks?
Yeah, well, I just say overall, just trust a whole lot more. That's kind of what we want the audience to leave off with this play about the hospital, is that these days, like, the idea of like holding face is something I understand is important, but also like if you're really struggling as an emerging artist or like a young person or even a millennial who's like realizing like, oh, this whole life I've lived is not what I want to do and I want to change dramatically, you know, change everything around. Don't be afraid to just like open up to your friends about that and be open about that. You know, because like by choosing to be vulnerable and like sharing your life in the moment without regard for like censorship or whatnot is going to inevitably turn around and be something that people will want to support and be with you for. So yeah, just trust a whole lot more. Yeah.
I mean, adding on to that, I feel like the whole process of this show has really taught me to stop rushing myself so much as well. Because theater is also just a whole different process, and it's been a while since I honestly got back into theater. And yeah, just to let myself slow down, trust myself a whole lot more, and also just make the art that you want to make. Don't let anything stop you, honestly. Keep working on it. Don't give up, because everything you do is going to lead to somewhere.
Wonderful. And don't let anything stop you from coming to see Above the Hospital. We're at the Weyni Mengesha Theatre, is that correct?
Yes.
Perfect. And when we've got your show dates, July 2nd to 11th at the Toronto Fringe. And if for whatever reason you're unfuckable and you missed the show, it's going to be on film, hopefully, soon-ish. We'll stay tuned for that. So keep on following these folks. I've had such a wonderful time chatting with the two of you today. I've learned so much. So thank you so much for joining me.
You want to link the Instagram?
Yes, yeah. So follow at Mid-20s Theater for further updates, graphic designs, and rehearsals, and yeah, links for tickets and all that. So yeah, we'll see you there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Daphne.
Thank you, Daphne.
My pleasure. This is Daphne St. Clair Ferguson signing off.